Okay, so we're starting to record. Go ahead.
What have you heard about woke culture?
I don't know what that term stands for. Like woke. What does that mean?
Go ahead.
I don't know what that means either.
No, should I just say that I don't know because I don't want to?
Honesty is totally fine.
Okay, I'm totally honest. So.
To give you some context,
Okay.
woke culture kind of refers to this culture or a sense that when we say woke, it means you have to be like awake and aware of certain issues. So some people say like, oh, are you woke? Have you heard that before? Or stay woke?
Mm-hmm.
So what that typically refers to is like, are you aware of the issues? Usually pertains to some certain social justice issues. The term woke is affiliated, it started probably in like, I think around the 60s by this black writer who kind of talked about social justice issues and whatnot. And then it's been like kind of filtered through like Erica, how come I can't think of her last name? The singer. Her name's not
Badu.
Erica. Is it Erica Badu? Okay, Erica Badu. And then Childish Gambino used it like in his music, and it's kind of been used a lot, kind of thing. But it's kind of like the sense of like, are you aware? Do you know what's going on?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, have you ever what have you heard about woke cultures? Right? Is that the question?
Mhm.
I've never heard.
Okay.
This is my first time hearing this term.
All right. Have you ever felt intimidated or shut out of a space or conversation because you were hesitant that you weren't aware enough or woke enough?
Yes, a lot. I usually feel that where I'm in a humanity class or I'm not in a social justice class, but in a class where my culture's background or where I come from doesn't necessarily I don't know. Okay, so like if I'm in a class and I feel that where I come from doesn't matter, what matters is the choice of words or what am I gonna say. Also with the context, like with the book. For example, my business classes. I feel like I don't have the right English to answer, or I don't have the right knowledge to answer. So most of the times I would just, although I would have some ideas and a lot of backgrounds about some stuff, but I would just stand and be quiet because I don't feel necessarily encouraged or welcome to say more or to provide more ish.
Have you ever felt that way when the conversation has had to do with social justice or
No.
issues related to?
No, when it has to do with human, or I would be more specific in my humanity class where they would talk about humans in general. I feel that people are more concerned with not with what I have to say, but how I say it. What words are you using? Which is the opposite of like social justice classes where tell me about your experience. So, like, what did you face? What do you have to add? So when it came to like language, more of where I come from or my culture or the diversity that I can provide, I couldn't present that in my humanity or in my business classes. Did I answer it right?
No, there is, like Stacey mentioned, there's no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
Have you seen this happen at a cultural center?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Okay.
You mean like where people are afraid to be part of a conversation because maybe they feel they don't have enough knowledge for that particular topic?
Oh, so I'm talking people, not me.
Yeah.
I've never felt not encouraged to talk in a cultural resource center. I've seen people that most people would back up or would not would be afraid to share. In my perspective, I never felt that way because I feel that in the cultural resource center is like a place where I belong, where this is my space. This is where whatever I say counts. Some people won't that I've seen won't feel confident enough to talk because they feel that it's a sensitive place where they don't want to trigger they don't want to target, they don't want to say an assumption, they don't want to use a stereotype that is known. They're afraid to speak or to share what they have because if they don't have the enough knowledge, they would just stay quiet.
What barriers, if any, do you feel new students of color may encounter at cultural centers?
So what barriers they would face in a cultural resource center?
What stops them from coming to our spaces?
Can I share what I shared with you? Yeah. So it's from my personal experience. I know that it won't plug with many students, or like it's not the right answer, like why. But it kind of told me something when I was working at a cultural resource center, where people felt that cultural resource center was for specific people, for those people that come from that place, and they felt intimidated to go into it because they didn't feel included. And that was because of the language they heard, or the whatever representation it was that cultural resource center had. And it doesn't make any sense to me because those resource centers were built for students and from students. If you don't feel included, this is a place where you demand to be included. And that's how I saw it, where I didn't feel represented, but I represented myself in that space because I knew that I had the power to demand to see myself in a space. Not to force it, but to suggest it and to participate in meetings and to be really active with that center in order to be included.
Okay. How can we create more accessible spaces for new students of color at cultural centers? Students of color who are beginning their social, or for students of color who are beginning their social justice education.
Can you explain more?
How can we make our spaces more welcoming to students who might not feel like cultural spaces, new students of color who might feel cultural spaces aren't for them, right? For various reasons, as you talked about.
Mm-hmm. So, if I was a student of color, I am a student of color. Okay, let me rephrase that. If as a student of color, if I didn't feel welcome in a space, or I was intimidated to go to that space, what would make me feel a little bit welcome is if I see a welcome sign that says everyone is welcome, or please come on in, or if you want to learn more about us, come in. And it's a thing that'll help me go in a little bit. I think that I tried in my previous work was where student workers, when people hang out the centers, and we're like inside, and you just see people hanging out at tables, or like you could come in and there's coffee and there's people, where workers would just go around and would just suggest saying, hey, we have this resource center, if you want to hang out, you're welcome. When I first visited the cultural resource centers was because of what I heard, and from their mission statement, what that resource center had to provide for me, and I felt welcome when I saw the person in front desk saying, hi, welcome, and I think those kind of things would help students feel welcomed a little bit. I think I talked a lot.
That's great.
What would you say to a new student who feels that they don't belong at the at the centers?
At first, I would ask why. Like, why do you not feel belong? If it was a conversation, I would go in depth. Like, why? Is it representation? Is it what is it that you don't belong in? And then after that, act upon it. Make them write in a suggestion. Do you wanna? It's a choice. Do you want to be in there, or do you not want to be in there? Do you want to be included or not? Because it's a choice. If that person wanted to be included but felt not included, there is solutions to that. I would connect them to the coordinator. I would like take a suggestion from them saying, you know what, I want to see my culture in the resource center. What do you want to see? And I would help them. I would help show them that the cultural resource centers are for everyone. They're not for specific people or this isn't that, but it's for all students. And I would show them the real mission statement and what the resource center stands for and what kind of supports could they have from the resource center.
And finally, what would you say to a new student who feels like they don't know enough to use or participate at the centers?
I would explain the whole umbrella first and how the resource centers fall under diversity and inclusion and how does everything tag along. That's the first move or step. And then I would explain why are there different resource centers with all those different names? What do they stand for? What kind of support could you get from the resource center? What is not in a resource center, which is trying to disclude some people or not be inclusive to all. I would try to show them that. I would also share with the coffee, because I know I love coffee. I'm a coffee person. So it'll be like, there's coffee, how they can make free friends. Not only that, the resource centers would help educate them about the stereotypes that we know. So hanging out at a cultural resource center is not gonna only help you have fun, but it'll help educate them about all those stereotypes that is happening. It would help them learn more about cultures, about religions, etc. Whoever is hanging out there in the center would help give you answers to whatever questions you have or educate you about a stereotype or etc.
Wafa, have you heard about social justice elitism before?
Mm-mm.
It's kind of the idea, and you've talked about it a little bit, of like certain people who have access to certain education, who know like the right words or phrases or know the theories, who've had access to that education, shutting people out because they don't use the right word.
Mm-hmm.
When those people are trying to honestly learn, and they're not aware, right? They haven't had the same access to that education and stuff. That's one thing that we're trying to combat, because we've had students sit on the couch right outside of the door and say, oh, I don't think I'm going to go in there. I don't know enough, kind of thing. And that's one thing like we're trying to address, right? Like, how come that person feels like they don't feel comfortable coming in our space just because they feel like they don't know enough, right? We by no means know everything, kind of thing. I don't know, I feel like you were kind of talking about it without like talking about it too, right? Yeah.
Okay, so I would add to that.
Yeah.
The fear of not going into a center is a feeling that we have that I don't know enough about this center. I don't want to say the wrong words. I don't want to get into trouble. I'm just gonna stay out. And I'm not necessarily against those resource centers, but I don't just feel included. I don't want conflict. And that is not why we are here. If you just if we okay, that's not why the resource centers are here. They are here to connect people, build bridges between people. I would tell you more about Islam, as you know, I'm a Muslim. Tell me more about your culture. And the resource centers provide the space to have those open conversations where usually like in the US in general, it's you just see one person just walking school, home, school, and you just don't interact with humans, right? And the resource centers give you the opportunity to interact with humans, to just have simple conversations. And if we just had a sign that says, just come and have a conversation or just learn something, that shows that Cultural Resource Center is, we don't expect you to know more about a culture or a specific culture, or we just need you to hang out and to be open and to learn, and to educate yourself. I would just,
Thank you. Yeah, and I just realized, like, me saying, like, have you heard of this term that you've talked about as, like, social justice elitism is itself, right? Have you heard of this theory and this term? And, like, you know, it's so funny, like, how it's cyclical kind of stuff. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add, or?
You tell me if you want me to add something, like, because I'm just awkward with, around the camera whenever the camera's here. Just
When you said earlier, and you've said it a couple times about that somebody might be afraid to either say something that's stereotypical, like what do you think they're afraid of? Like what's going to happen if somebody, in your opinion, I mean, because it's just your opinion, what do you think, why are they afraid? Like what's the consequence of them saying something wrong?
of saying something wrong.
Yeah.
I noticed in this society that we live in is people tend to, they want to be aware of their words and the choice of words, and they want to avoid conflict, even if in like correcting them and like, oh no, what you know about me is wrong. People tend to avoid that, as if like in the society that we live in, as if like, oh, they corrected me, or oh, I said something wrong. I want to say something, but I'm being recorded. But sometimes like people get scared to be corrected, or to show that no, you're wrong. What do you have? The assumption that you have about me is wrong, and they're afraid to like in conversation to face that, and that's what I think. So like you find people on social media writing, and then they're like but they won't say it face. They would be scared. They want to avoid that conversation-ish.
Okay, I'm gonna stop.